Okay, so now we're talking about translation. Translation. Okay, so where did transcription happen again? Inside of a cell? In the nucleus, because DNA always stays inside the nucleus, okay? Where is translation going to happen? Where? It's going to happen in the cytoplasm, okay? Specifically, because the ribosomes, all right, they're just kind of floating around.
May I have your attention, please? Jenny, the speech therapist, will not be in today. Thank you.
Anyway, so ribosomes are just floating around in that gel-like substance, right? And ribosomes are where this actually happens. So, translation occurs in ribosomes in cytoplasm. So I don't know why I put cytoplasm as two different words. It is one word. Okay? And so the way that I would define translation is ribosomes reading mRNA to make long chains of amino acids. What are long chains of amino acids? It's like one of the first things we talked about in this class.
Oh, it's protein.
Proteins, right? Proteins are long chains of amino acids. Okay, so essentially, it's just ribosomes reading mRNA to make proteins. Okay, makes proteins. How does DNA know, or not DNA, excuse me, ribosomes know what to read on RNA? How does that work? Okay, just like with the DNA during transcription, how there were introns and exons and it knows where to start once it hits that intron, we have start things in our RNA that tell us where to start and where to stop. All right? But we have to talk about these first, and they're called codons. Okay? And so a codon is a 3-nucleotide sequence that codes for a specific amino acid. Okay, so when the ribosome is reading the RNA, it reads it in groups of 3, okay? And each of those group of 3 is called a codon made up of 3 nucleotides, right? There are 3 stop codons. Okay, these tell RNA or ribosome to stop reading RNA and finish making protein. Okay? And so there's 3 of those, and we'll talk about those. You don't really need to know what the 3 are. I could potentially, and it probably will be, an extra credit question on our quiz Wednesday if you know the 3 stop codons, okay? But you do need to know that there is only one start codon. Okay? And we're going to talk about what he is. or she. I guess there's no real genders in codons. So, the start codon, so the very, very first amino acid in any protein, okay, is methionine, okay? This is the amino acid associated with starting a protein. So just kind of like how when you start a sentence, the first letter is always capital, right? When you start a protein chain of amino acids, the first one's always methionine, okay? But the codon, the three-letter sequence, is AUG, okay? AUG is the start codon, and it codes for methionine. All right? Okay, so how this kind of works is you're going to have your piece of mRNA, okay? And so real quick, a refresher on RNAs. mRNA carries code, okay? rRNA, this makes ribosomes. Okay, now this next one is going to be really important for this upcoming step, and that's the tRNA. Okay, tRNA carries amino acids to ribosome and have corresponding nucleotide sequence. Okay, so what that kind of means is, so let's go ahead and draw. So we'll have AUG, okay, because that's always the start, okay, AUG. Then we'll throw like a CUA, AGU, UAC, CA, it's always uppercase, AG, okay? And we're going to have this entering our ribosome. All right? Okay, so this will be ribosome. Okay, and so what's going to happen here is you're going to have your tRNA. All right, and they have a really weird looking shape. I'm going to try and draw one. And they honestly kind of look like a T, okay? And so it's going to have that. I guess it doesn't really look like a T. The way some people draw it, they look like a T. But it has this open spot at the top, okay? And what that open spot is for is here you can put, it carries and holds the amino acid, okay? And so this amino acid is methionine. Okay? But how does it know, how does methionine know that it wants to go on AUG? I'm going to draw this down a little bit more. Okay? And it's because of this thing called an, so as a corresponding nucleotide sequence, it's called an anticodon. Okay? So what the anticodon is, it is the exact opposite nucleotide sequence on tRNA that tells it where to line up with mRNA. Okay, so AUG. What would the anticodon be of AUG? U AC. Okay? And so those things match up. It comes into the ribosome. It'll drop off this, okay? And then it will bring something else there. Okay? So like the next one, for instance, CUA, this would be leucine would be the next one, okay? So it'd go methionine, then leucine, okay? And the anticodon for this would be GAU, okay? Then we'll go along. Let's make this UAG. Okay? AGU would be serine. Okay? And the anticodon for that would be UCA. And then finally, UAG is a stop codon. Okay? And the opposite of that would be AUC. Okay, so this would go along, and your tRNA is going to bring methionine, and then leucine, and then serine, and then it will stop once it's been read right here, okay? Do we see how that works? And what we have to understand, when it's reading your codons, okay, so right here, here, okay, these are all called reading frames. Okay, and so these are the how ribosome reads RNA, mRNA to find amino acid. Okay? So are there any questions about this right now? Talk about mutations. Okay? Go ahead and put everything away. This shouldn't take too long, and then you'll just do a little bit of practice. Like I said, you guys should have about the last hour to study or work on makeup work, okay? So can anybody tell me what mutations are? Nick.
Mutation is like when you change,
Change what?
like your appearance.
Change in your DNA, which will change your appearance. Not always your appearance. It'll change something about you, because sometimes it's internal stuff. A lot of times it's internal stuff. Yeah, it's a change in your DNA code. Okay? And so, there are several different types of mutations. We've talked about the fact that Most mutations don't do anything, right? 93% of mutations do nothing. Then there's harmful ones but not lethal. Then there's lethal ones, and then there's a very, 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 very small percentage, 1%. Sometimes I think it's actually less than 1%, that are beneficial. Okay? But there are what? Okay. So anyway, there's two main types of mutations, okay? There's more other types of mutations, but there's two main types. The two main types of mutations are called a point mutation, okay? And so a point mutation, this changes one nucleotide, okay? Changes only one amino acid. Okay, so point mutations usually aren't too bad, okay? Because they're only changing one thing. Alright? But, so do you guys remember what I talked about? Where codons, there was like this one, this one, this one. That was called a reading frame, right? And so the other type of mutations that you can have are called frame shift mutations. Okay? So frame shift mutations, these are a lot worse because it's shifting the whole reading frame one way or the other. Okay? You're going to have moves reading frame, okay? And so this is going to change everything, okay? This changes whole DNA sequence, many amino acids. All right? So do we understand the difference between those two? Okay? So you got your point, you got your frame shift. Now, a lot of mutations don't do anything, right? They are neutral. If you change something, now that's because, again, we talked, there are 64 codons, okay, and only 20 amino acids. Okay, so say, let's just say we have a mutation, all right? And it ends up that we have what it's supposed to be is GUU, but instead we get GUC. What is the amino acid we're going to get either way? Valine, right? And so, if a mutation what's the word I'm looking for? Changes DNA, but amino acid is still the same. This is going to be called a silent mutation because it doesn't change anything. Okay? So, just thinking about that. In your guys' DNA, we all probably have for like eye color. Okay, let's just say eye color uses valine. Or not even eye color, because eye color can be changed. Let's just say we all have, do we all have all 10 of our fingers in here? Alright. Nobody's got an 11th? Just checking. You never know. Alright? But let's just say valine is one of the amino acids, it tells your body you get 10 fingers, right? Jordan might have GUU. Nick might have GUC. Evan might have GUA. Tyson might have GUG, okay? You all might have different sequences, different codons, but as long as they're still coding for valine, if you guys have changed that over time, it doesn't matter. That is a silent mutation, okay? Still gonna have 10 of these, all right? If you have a mutation though, say something got messed up and all of a sudden you have glycine, okay, instead of valine, maybe you'll have a 6th finger coming off your left side.
Oh, that'd be pretty sick.
What if you get extra thumb?
Sure, you could have a thumb on either side. It'd be looking like this. That'd be pretty wild. Probably be pretty easy to palm a
Yeah, I
basketball.
was about to say that.
But anyway, so there's these 2 different types, and then there are silent ones, okay? What we're going to talk about are the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 other types of mutations that will cause things to happen. Some of them are point, some of them are frame shift, okay? I'm going to give you guys, alright, so the normal sentence is going to be I'm going to write this in all caps. Big fat cat ate the rat. Perfect. Okay, so the first type of mutation we're going to talk about is called a missense. Okay? And so a missense, this is going to be a point mutation. Alright? It's a point mutation, and all it does is change one nucleotide, but sequence is same length. Okay? And so, if we were going to take this, basically we would just say, let's say instead of the big fat cat, all of a sudden it's the biz fat cat. Ate the rat. Okay? So you can still read most of it, right? You can just tell that something's not quite right with that. Okay? But everything else is the same. Okay? We all good with a missense? Now the difference, that's a substitution where we're flipping out just this and this, right? Everything else remains the same. Now we can have a nonsense substitution, okay? Nonsense substitutions are point, and they change one nucleotide, but stop sequence early. Okay, so what would be the stop codon in this sentence here, if we were talking about it? What is the last thing? Rat. Okay? So now imagine that we have the big, but all of a sudden instead of fat, that F gets changed to an R. Okay? So the big rat. Well, if rat is our stop in this sentence, okay, then all of a sudden, that's it. That's all that we make a code for, okay, is the big rat. We don't know anything about the big rat. We don't know anything else. We don't know how much longer that sentence would have been. All right? But that's where it stops. Okay? Are there any other questions there? Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about are frame shifts. And both of these are frame shifts. Okay, they're just kind of the opposite of each other. So one is going to be an insertion. Okay? Insertion is just what it sounds like. You add one nucleotide. Okay? And so with an insertion, let's go ahead and start the. Now all of these are 3-letter words, right? Just like a codon is. Okay, so all these 3-letter words are like a codon. We're reading them in groups of 3. All right? Now let's just say we added a Z after the I. Okay? So now we have the biz, but we didn't get rid of that G. Okay? It's not like they got flip-flopped out. Okay? It's not a substitution like these two. The G now gets pushed over. Right? So all of a sudden, we add this one letter, and it changes every other word in the sentence, right? Completely changing everything about this, right? When you change this one letter, everything else is still the same when it's just a quick little substitution. But when you add something, it's going to completely throw off everything after you add that nucleotide, okay? Does everybody see this? So it completely shifted the reading frame over 1. Okay? Deletion is going to be the same thing. You just remove 1 nucleotide. Alright? And so here, this would go. Let's just start with, oh, we got rid of the E and the. Okay. So does everybody see the big difference between a frame shift and a point? Frame shift completely messes up everything. Point just messes up one little thing. Jordan.
Got the buzz that says he's got 8 rats.
8, well, whoop. 8. There you go. Now there are 2 more, all right? But just for reference, something like a missense substitution would be, it'd cause something that would cause androplasia, or achondroplasia, all right? Which is basically where the cartilage at the end of your long bones, which are like your arms and legs and stuff, doesn't properly work. So do you know what a missense could potentially read to if you have that achondroplasia? That's how you get dwarfism with little people. Okay?
because the cartilage at the ends of their bones doesn't properly build up. Okay. Muscular dystrophy. This is where your body, the muscle in your body, begins to atrophy pretty fast. That's a nonsense substitution. Okay. Deletion, cystic fibrosis, where you get like the mucus that builds up in your lungs, and people have to get like machines that pound on your chest, basically, that break up the mucus. That's a deletion. Okay. Crohn's disease, which is like inflammation. You have problems in your intestines, and you have really, really problematic diarrhea. You get really bad abdominal pain due to just that inflammation. It's a really horrible, painful thing to live with. That's an insertion one. Okay? Now, next to... Am I good to erase this?
Yep.
Okay, just double checking. The next two are pretty similar. And it's weird because they're not really a frame shift, and they're not really a point. Like technically it does move the frame, but you still read everything the same, okay? So this is going to be called a duplication. Alright, and in a duplication, what you're going to do here is oh, and just for reference, in insertion and deletion, I said you add one or remove one. You can add more than one. That's possible, but you add at least one or remove at least one. But anyway, so duplication is where you add.
Students will be going outside for lunch recess, so please remember to bundle up. Thank you.
Cool. Anyway, so you add one full codon. That is a copy of the one before it. Okay? And so like with this, let's just say that we had the big fat cat ate the rat. Okay, everything else is the same. We just have two cats now, all of a sudden, all right? It says cat. So just cat. Everything else is still readable. We just now have that in there, okay? This would be like adding two glycines next back to back, okay? And this can cause, again, I don't know all these off the top of my head. I know these, but I don't know what diseases they cause. Charcot-Marie Tooth disease, which is a damage to peripheral nerves leading to weakness and atrophy in the muscles of the hands and lower legs. So your peripheral nerves are like the nerves in your arms and legs. Basically, it weakens those nerves, and you begin to lose feeling and muscle density in your extremities. But you can have one, okay? These are called expanding. This is the last one. Expanding mutations. This is where you add a duplication each generation. So the big difference between these is that in a duplication, it only happens once, okay? You mess up, you make two cats or whatever, all right? And now all of a sudden it's just like that for the rest of the time. An expanding mutation, so Gen 1, so this would be Gen 1, I guess, that's the original, but then the first generation mutation, the big fat cat ate the
now all of a sudden in G2, generation 2, we copy all that DNA again. The big fat cat, ate the rat. So what would be in generation 3?
Another
Would be 3 cats. Oh, 4 cats, yeah. The big fat cat ate the rat. Okay? Expanding mutations just continually push those out. Alright? Okay, we have one. First things first, you can get mutations do happen randomly, right? There's plenty of people who get mutations throughout their lives for no apparent reason. But are there certain things that can cause mutations to occur more frequently?
I guess pretty good.
So, one of the reasons that if we're dealing with some of the chemicals that we have in the closet, okay, that we have to be more careful than others, some of those, if you get exposure to it, not like as much as we would probably ever get, but if you get a bunch of exposure to it, can cause problems, okay? Why do we wear sunscreen?
You don't burn.
So you don't burn. What burns you? What in the sunlight burns you? UV radiation, okay? That radiation is what can cause skin cancer to occur, okay? It changes that UV radiation. It burns you, number one. When you get a sunburn, that is a radiation burn. People don't always think about that, but it is in fact a radiation burn. But if you get enough exposure to that sunlight, that UV radiation, it can cause changes in your skin cells. And then you get what? Skin cancer, okay? Similar to how I've known several people, never smoked in their life, got lung cancer. But when you smoke, there's carcinogens in there, okay? And that's the word I want to bring up. Is number one, mutagens. Mutagens are things that can cause mutations to be more likely okay, so that's something that can cause things to be more likely there. Now, if you're talking specifically about cancer, that's a carcinogen. Carcinogen is a mutation, or a something that promotes mutations leading to cancer. Do you guys know what cancer is, actually?
It's like, isn't it when you have like, your like cells
it's
change?
something that
Like
happens
you have like
all
one
the
like
time.
bad, like a cell that like isn't right. Kind of.
So you have a bad a cell that isn't right, yeah. You have a mutated cell. But what's going on with that? Why is it bad?
Because it's sick.
So so we've talked about the cell cycle, right? Where your cells grow and then divide and then grow and then divide, right? But there's usually a limit to that. There's a regulation. Those cells eventually die, okay? And they don't reproduce as often, okay? That makes sense? Cancer is a mutation in a cell that causes the
the cell cycle to be unregulated. Okay? And this means cells grow and divide like crazy. Okay? They're going to just grow and grow and grow. If you get enough cells, cells become tissue. What will that tissue turn into? Starts with a T. Tumors, okay? Lung cancer is tumors on your lungs. Brain cancer would be a tumor in your brain, okay? Skin cancer is tumors on your skin, all right? All of those different things, cancer leads to tumors, okay? Now you can have malignant, and you can also have, what is that word? Benign, thank you. Benign too, what?
Benign doesn't do anything, right? Benign's kind of just there.
It's kind of just there. Generally, you can kind of live with, but you don't want benign tumors, obviously, but the malignant is the bad one, okay? But anyway, so that's kind of just talking about this, because I'm sure everybody at some point knows somebody who has had or has cancer. Well, I guess we all do. But cancer itself is not something that gets passed down from generation to generation, okay? Now my mom and my grandma both had skin cancer, okay? That does not mean me and my sister automatically have skin cancer, right? Might mean that we have a higher propensity of getting it. We might be more likely to get it, right? But that doesn't mean we automatically get it. And that's the last thing we're going to talk about right now, is the difference between somatic mutations, okay? And a somatic mutation, this is a somatic cell or body cell, okay? So those are any non-sex cells. So a somatic mutation happens in your body cells, in your somatic cells, which are your non-sex cells, and these cause mutation to you, but not to your offspring. Okay? So again, you might be at a higher likelihood to have cancer if it runs in your family. That's why I really like to wear long sleeves and a lot of sunscreen during the summer, because I know that. But does not automatically mean that you're going to get it, okay? Cancer is one of those things that happens after a long time. You're not just born with it generally, okay? Now, if it is in your sex cells, another name for a sex cell mutation is a germline mutation. And these are what can be passed down to offspring. Okay? Any questions about any of that?